It started with a text message that made my blood run cold. "We need to discuss your property. Immediate compliance is required." My first thought? HOA notifications are annoying but harmless. But this one felt different. Because the property in question wasn't some suburban yard or cookie-cutter mansion. No, this was my private $3 million island. Completely mine. Surrounded by turquoise waters, palm trees swaying in the ocean breeze, and absolute unchallenged privacy. And suddenly, some HOA Karen thought she could dictate what I did here. Karen. That's what everyone called her in the neighborhood WhatsApp groups. Loud, entitled, impossible to reason with. But I didn't expect her to try this. Not here. Not on an island I fought years to acquire. Working late nights and making sacrifices most people wouldn't even imagine. And yet there it was, a demand letter, full of legal jargon, claiming that my private island was somehow subject to HOA regulations. The audacity of it was staggering. I remember pacing along the white sand beach, the waves crashing against the dock, thinking, am I reading this right? This can't be real. And yet, as I scrolled down, my heart sank. She'd sent a team, an inspection crew, to my island. Without asking. Without permission. Just showing up like they owned the place. My first thought? Call the police! But this wasn't a simple trespassing case. Karen had written, in all caps, that the HOA had the authority to seize the property if I didn't comply. My island. My island. Not some HOA tract. Not a townhouse subdivision. A private, multi-million-dollar island that I had poured my life into. I knew I had to act fast. I grabbed my phone, dialed my attorney, and prepared for what I knew would be a battle. This wasn't just about money or land. It was about principle. About never letting someone bully their way onto your property. And let me tell you, when Karen realized she'd picked the wrong person to mess with, things escalated fast. Boats were involved, helicopters, lawyers, and yes, a few very shocked HOA board members who had no idea how far I was willing to go to protect my sanctuary. I'll admit, part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Part of me wanted to document everything, because I knew this was going to become a story that people couldn't believe. An HOA Karen attempting to seize a private $3 million island? It sounds like a movie. But trust me, every word is real. Every tense, ridiculous moment happened exactly as it unfolded. By the end of the day, I had a plan. And let's just say, Karen was about to find out that private islands aren't playgrounds for HOA dictators. The morning after her inspection team arrived, I knew I couldn't ignore the situation. Karen thought she could waltz onto my island, intimidate me, and push me around with HOA rules that had zero jurisdiction here. I was about to show her just how wrong she was. I started with a calm call to her HOA board. "You need to rescind this immediately," I said. My voice was measured, but every word carried weight. At first, they tried to talk in circles, using phrases like community, standards, and mandatory. Compliance. I listened politely, then reminded them that a private island is not part of any HOA jurisdiction. That usually gets people talking fast, but not Karen. She doubled down. Within hours, I received another text from her. This time, it wasn't formal. It was angry, almost threatening. She said that if I didn't allow her inspection, she would escalate things legally. And I knew what that meant. Lawsuits, harassment, and the type of chaos that a board entitled HOA Karen thrives on. But here's where she made her first critical mistake. She underestimated me. She assumed that just because she could send letters and make threats, I would back down. She didn't know that I had spent years navigating complicated property laws and that my legal team was ready for any stunt she could pull. I decided to document everything: texts, emails, videos of her inspection team leaving my dock, even aerial photos of her violations claims. I wasn't just preparing to fight. I was preparing to expose her audacity to the world. Then came the showdown. A small boat carrying two of her HOA representatives approached my dock uninvited. I was there, camera in hand, waiting. Calmly, I met them at the edge of the dock. "You cannot step foot here without my permission," I said. They argued. I recorded. They tried to intimidate me. I stayed firm. The standoff lasted nearly 15 minutes, with me on the dock and them arguing across the water. I didn't raise my voice, but my stance was clear. My island, my rules. When they finally turned back, frustrated and red-faced, I realized something important. Karen had escalated too soon, too aggressively. By trying to bully me onto a property she had no legal claim to, she had set herself up for failure. Her anger would now fuel my strategy. That day, I began planning not just a defense, but a counter that would make her regret ever thinking she could seize my island. Karen's mistake? She had turned a routine. HOA overreach into a personal vendetta, and she had no idea what she was about to unleash. By the third day, it was clear that Karen wasn't going to back down on her own. Her threats were escalating, and the HOA board seemed powerless or unwilling to rein her in. I realized that if I wanted this nonsense to end, I had to bring the fight to a level she couldn't bully. The law. I contacted my attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense property law expert who had handled high-stakes disputes before. "We're going to make this crystal clear," I said. "My island is private. No HOA rules apply here, and anyone who steps foot without permission will face the full consequences." My attorney smiled knowingly. "We're not just stopping them. We're setting an example." And that's exactly what we plan to do. First, we sent a formal cease and desist letter to Karen and her board, clearly outlining the legal boundaries. It included citations from property law proving that my island was entirely outside the HOA's authority. But more importantly, we documented every interaction, texts, emails, photos, and even video clips of her inspection team. I wanted the record to be undeniable. Unsurprisingly, Karen didn't read it calmly. The next morning, I received a frantic phone call from her, voice dripping with outrage. "You can't do this!" she shouted. "The HOA has rules, and you're ignoring them." I stayed calm, letting her rant while mentally noting that every word was evidence. Every time she overstepped, she strengthened my position. Then the real fun began. I decided to involve a court-appointed mediator to ensure the HOA understood that legal overreach wouldn't be tolerated. Karen and a few board members arrived, clearly expecting me to be intimidated. Instead, I presented my case with clear evidence, calmly dismantling every claim she made. They squirmed. They argued. They tried to deflect. But when confronted with the law, Karen had no defense. By the end of the mediation session, her frustration was palpable. She realized that the more she pushed, the weaker her position became. I wasn't just defending my property. I was exposing her overreach and arrogance for everyone to see. And believe me, Karen doesn't like losing. That night, I reviewed the footage of her reaction on the dock, the emails, and the mediation session. I felt a mix of relief and anticipation. Relief because my property and my peace was finally defended, and anticipation because I knew this was far from over. Karen had made a critical mistake. She had turned a minor HOA grievance into a full-blown legal spectacle, and she had no idea how badly she was going to lose. Next, things escalated in ways I hadn't even imagined. Boats, media attention, and one very angry Karen on a mission to reclaim her authority were coming. And that's where Chapter 4 begins, the point where her obsession becomes her downfall. By now, word of the dispute had spread. Neighbors were whispering, online forums were buzzing, and I had a few curious visitors stopping by, strictly on my terms, of course. Karen, however, was not satisfied with quietly losing in mediation. No, she was determined to make a scene, and she wanted everyone to witness her authority in action. It started with a call from a local news outlet. Someone had tipped them about the HOA dispute. painting it as a bizarre battle over a private island. I agreed to an interview, carefully. I knew this was the perfect chance to expose Karen's overreach, but I also had to be smart. I couldn't just rant. I had to present facts and evidence, which I did. I showed the documents proving my ownership, the legal letters, and even the footage of her team trespassing. Karen, of course, caught wind of the coverage. Within hours, she arrived at the dock with 2 board members in tow, brandishing printouts, and a stack of what she claimed were legal notices. She was loud, confrontational, and clearly expecting to intimidate me. But here's the thing. By this point, I was ready. Cameras were rolling, evidence was ready, and I wasn't about to be bullied on my own property. "What part of private property don't you understand?" I asked calmly as she waved her papers. Karen sputtered, pointing at the documents, claiming, "The HOA has rights!" Her voice cracked with frustration, and her board members looked unsure. They could see the mountain of evidence against them, yet Karen refused to back down. She started pacing, gesturing wildly, and eventually, she raised her voice to the point where it drew attention from the news crew. The broadcast captured every moment of her meltdown, her face red, her hands shaking, and her arguments falling apart in real time. By the end of the confrontation, it was clear to everyone watching. Karen had lost control. She stormed off, muttering threats and insisting she would get a lawyer. But the public nature of her breakdown had already sealed her defeat. Her obsession with control had turned into a spectacle, and she had underestimated the power of evidence, preparation, and composure. I couldn't help but feel a mix of vindication and disbelief. A private island, a determined property owner, and one overreaching HOA Karen had become the story of the week. But more importantly, I had maintained control without ever losing my cool. Karen had shown her true colors, and now the world had seen them too. Little did she know, her obsession wasn't just going to cost her reputation. It was about to cost her far more. The final chapter would reveal just how devastating her miscalculation would be. After the public meltdown, Karen retreated to regroup. But her obsession with my island wasn't over. She spent the next week sending emails, calling board members, and even trying to involve local officials, insisting the HOA had jurisdiction. Every attempt, however, only reinforced the reality. She had no legal ground. By this point, my attorney and I were prepared for every move. We decided to escalate strategically. First, we filed a formal harassment notice with the county, documenting each attempt Karen made to interfere with my property. We included the videos, emails, texts, and even witness statements from neighbors and staff on the island. It painted a clear picture. Karen had crossed the line from HOA enforcement to personal harassment. The legal team handling the case confirmed what I already knew. Karen had underestimated the consequences of her actions. Then came the media coverage. The local news ran a story highlighting the absurdity of an HOA attempting to claim a multi-million-dollar private island. Public opinion quickly turned against Karen. Social media users labeled her a Karen in the truest sense, and her email inbox overflowed with criticism. Her reputation, carefully cultivated as a figure of authority in the HOA, was crumbling. But the real turning point came when I served a cease and desist with a strong legal warning. It explicitly stated that any future attempt to approach or interfere with the island would result in fines, legal action, and potential criminal charges. Karen's reaction was immediate. Frantic calls, angry letters, and desperate attempts to rally the HOA board. By now, even the board had grown wary. They had seen firsthand that siding with Karen meant legal liability, not authority. Finally, the settlement arrived. Karen agreed to a legally binding agreement. She could no longer interfere in any capacity, personally or through the HOA, and she had to publicly acknowledge that my island was outside their jurisdiction. She had to cover part of the legal fees she caused by her harassment. It was the ultimate humiliation for someone who had spent months trying to assert power she didn't have. As I stood on the dock, watching the sun dip into the turquoise waters, I realized how close things had come to chaos. Karen had attempted to seize a $3 million private island, and through patience, preparation, and calm determination, I had turned her overreach into her own undoing. My island was safe, my legal rights intact, and the world had seen just how far some people will go when ego drives them instead of reason. In the end, Karen's biggest mistake wasn't challenging me, it was underestimating me. And that mistake? Priceless.